The game of the year, Denver and South Dakota's mile-high battle ends with historic performances. The South Dakota State women put on a couple of clinics and roll to remain unbeaten as they go into a game between number 1 and number 2 in the Summit. Reigning men's champs Oral Roberts make 2 statements at home and say, hey, we're still here.
Sometimes you have games like that and you have to find a way, and we found a way tonight.
Welcome to another edition of Summit League Spotlight. He's Darren Wallace, I'm Keenan Dixon, and it is halftime of the Summit League season. The game of the year was special in Denver, where 2 of the most pure scoring performances that you'll probably ever see in this college game were on display. Tommy Bruner cashed 49 points, and Caleb Stewart scored 44. We'll run through the tape here in a bit. Darren, what was your first impression of that special game?
Yeah, step aside Pac-12 after dark. We got Summit League after dark, and that was, you talk about the scoring and shot making of both teams. Tommy Bruner, to score even 30 in a college game is already ridiculous, but not only did Tommy Bruner score 49, Caleb Stewart put up 44. It's a shame that one of them had to lose.
Yeah, that was a tough one. You kind of wanted to end in a tie, maybe.
Right.
Well, South Dakota State's women's team has created separation from the rest of the league after their 96-80 throttling of Oral Roberts on Sunday, a battle between 1 versus 2 on national television. Standalone game, and South Dakota State stepped up.
Yeah, it was a unique opportunity for South Dakota State. Coach Aaron Johnston talked about that unique opportunity to play on national TV on a national level and really just let people know what they're about, and they did just that. It looked like we were going to get a game for the ages, much like we saw on Thursday between South Dakota and Denver, but in that second half, South Dakota State just pulled away, showed their mettle, and showed why they're still the standard in the Summit League.
Yeah, and they're the standard that's going to be tested again on Thursday when they play North Dakota State. We'll talk more about that down the road in this show. Oral Roberts is still here, and they're probably saying, oh, and I'm back, dog. 2 wins over Omaha and South Dakota State at the Crib, and the Mabee Center remains a tough road spot to win.
Yeah, South Dakota State, they just can't quite, the past few years, get over that hump of beating Oral Roberts on the road. This is an Oral Roberts team that, has been going through their struggles. They don't look nearly as strong as they did a year ago. They ran the table a year ago, and this is a South Dakota State team that's at the top for a reason. But credit to Oral Roberts, they did what they needed to do at home. They were able to secure their home floor after, dropping one the previous week to a St. Thomas team who was trying to get back on their feet. So now South Dakota State, how do you answer, though? I still like them to be the top team on the men's side, but a really impressive win for the Golden Eagles.
A very impressive win. They're back in the mix after, last week we were sitting here, they were at the bottom of the league table. They're right in that middle part, and at the halfway point in the league season, still a lot to be sorted out on the men's side. 3 games separate last place to first place, as does 115 miles. South Dakota is at the bottom, while South Dakota State is in first. Those rivals will play each other on Sunday on CBS Sports Network in a standalone game. St. Thomas had a chance to be tied for first, but dropped a game at home to North Dakota. Both teams are tied for second with Denver. Omaha got a crucial win over Denver on the road on Saturday, while Oral Roberts beat Omaha and South Dakota State last week. Meanwhile, Kansas City has wins over Oral Roberts and Omaha. That's about as chaotic as it gets.
Yeah, when you look up and down on this entire men's side, you said it. Only 115 miles separates the top and bottom teams in the league, but everyone in the middle, you look at North Dakota, people started to write them off, and now they've rattled off a few impressive wins, and now they look like they could be a team that could not only impress, but could win the Summit League tournament. St. Thomas has been steady all year. Omaha, questions after they went 0-2 a week ago, but now after some impressive wins and they kind of start to look back to that form when they were at the top of the league, now they're back in the mix. Oral Roberts saying, like you said, I'm back, don't forget about me. But South Dakota State, even though they lost to Oral Roberts, it wouldn't shock me if they were to still remain at the top. For as much as this team, or this league on the men's side, it's kind of muddied up in the middle there. South Dakota State, we talked about how on the women's side, they're the standard. Well, the South Dakota State men are still kind of the standard outside of a couple of years from Oral Roberts. They've really been the standard on the men's side, and they're trying to prove that. So it's good luck to anyone trying to make any predictions on the men's side, because I can't call it.
It's been less than 2 years since South Dakota State's men's team went undefeated in Summit League play and, rolled through just like Oral Roberts did last year. On the women's side, the South Dakota State women did it. And, it's all South Dakota State on the women's side. The Jackrabbits are 7-0 and passed the test of beating Oral Roberts, just to have another big matchup this week at North Dakota State with a share of first place on the line. South Dakota is still in the mix, as is St. Thomas. There still is some balance within the women's side of the league, but it's very much South Dakota State, North Dakota State.
Yeah, you mentioned South Dakota there. I got it to a slow start. Now they're back up to 4-3 over 500 in conference play. Like I said, Kayla Kari, she's going to get that team right, and they're trending in the right direction. South Dakota State, though, who's going to beat them? At some point, if you're one of the other teams, it starts to get personal. Not that you have to hate or dislike anybody on South Dakota State or dislike the team or anything. They're a great team, and I'm sure everyone has nothing but respect for them. But it starts to get personal. Who was going to take down right now the Goliath? Who was going to slay that Goliath? I think if there is a David in this conference right now, it's North Dakota State. Elle Evans and Heaven Hamling. That's a duo that can get the job done. And Elle, we'll talk with Elle a little bit later. But just in talking with her, away from the show, everyone's just so keen on that South Dakota State defense. They're really tough to score on, but I expect that Thursday game to be a real grit and grind game and could come down to the last few possessions.
And it's in Fargo. North Dakota State wants to protect home court, of course. It's the halfway point of the season, so it's time to hand out some hardware. It's not real hardware, but Darren, let's start with the first team, All Summit, your squad on the men's side. Who are your top 5 players so far?
Yeah, I just want to preface this by saying I don't believe in half birthdays just as much as I don't believe in halfway awards. But that being said, I was asked a question, so I have an answer. On the men's side, I'm going to say Zeke Mayo, Tommy Bruner, Toko Tynamo, Frankie Fiddler, and Raheem Anthony. Those are my 5 that I'm putting on the first team. I think Zeke Mayo speaks for himself. He's the leader of the South Dakota State team. He's shooting a 38% clip from behind the line. He's averaging nearly 20 points per game in Summit League play. Zeke is the real deal. He's the goods. He was preseason player of the year as well, and he's played every bit as good as that label. So got to give all the credit to Zeke. But not to be outdone, Tommy Bruner's been just as good too. The nation's leading scorer would be a crime if we didn't include him. His teammates been good too. Frankie Fiddler at one point was averaging 30 a game in Summit League play, and Raheem Anthony in league play averaging over 16 points a game on a team with Parker Bjorklund, who we could argue he's been playing better than him. So those would be my 5 that I'm putting on my first team.
Here are my 5, and I'm just going to run through them. We'll talk a little bit more in depth towards the end of this segment here. But Tommy Bruner, of course, like you mentioned, nation's leading scorer. Zeke Mayo, he's been so good. South Dakota State has been so good. Isaac McBride from Oral Roberts after that 2-win performance last week. Frankie Fiddler from Omaha, I think he is having a stellar season. That's going to continue. Another 30-point performance on Saturday at Denver. And then BJ Omot from North Dakota. North Dakota is kind of snuck in there. They're hanging around.
Sneaky,
and this
fighting
team is
Hawks.
really good.
Sneaky.
Yeah. All right, who is your top 5 on the women's side?
On the women's side, Casey Borovich, dropped a triple-double not too long ago. That's she again, preseason play of the year as well. On the women's side, got to include her. Brooklyn Meyer, she's been spectacular for South Dakota State. Amber Scalia, 30-point performance for her over the weekend. She's been very impressive to start season play as we get to the halfway point. Heaven Hamling and Elle Evans will round it out. We were just talking about North Dakota State, that dynamic duo over there. I think it goes without saying they should both be first team.
Absolutely. On the women's side for me, Casey Borovich, obviously you mentioned her, preseason player of the year. She's averaging 20 points per game right now in league play. Elle Evans has been dominant so far. Heaven Hamling, again, as you mentioned. And then Ruthie Udomu has been special, averaging a double-double with points and rebounds so far in league play. A difficult player to stop. And then Brooklyn Meyer, who's also been very difficult for South Dakota State. All right, the newcomer or freshman of the year on the men's side for yourself.
On the men's side, my newcomer / freshman of the year is actually going to go to a newcomer, Jackson Brenchley, the man who can speak many languages. It's been a bright spot for Denver in that starting lineup. Really a glue guy, but he can light it up and score some points too. I really like what he's given Denver this season.
All right, for me, it's Caleb Stewart. I think he's been fantastic. The team goes as he goes. We saw what he did last week, 44 points on Thursday against Denver. This guy could shoot the ball. He can do everything. They know that when he's hot, and this team is going to be difficult to stop. The problem for him is he's just got to be a little more consistent, I think.
Yeah, consistency is key for him, but he can really light it up.
On the women's side for you?
On the women's side, same thing. Gonna go with, not the same thing. Well, actually, similar thing. It's another transfer.
Okay.
It's Talia Jones, transferring from UT Arlington. Nearly a 40 ball a couple weeks ago against South Dakota. I was there to witness it. It was incredibly impressive. She's really stood out to me, and she's a big reason why Oral Roberts is near the top of the standings on the women's side. So for me, it's got to go to her.
All right, Kendall Holmes for me from South Dakota. You mentioned that game from Talia Jones. That was against South Dakota, her 37 points. Well, Kendall Holmes has been stellar for the Coyotes, a transfer from DePaul. Can really shoot the ball. And again, another player for South Dakota that when they're on, they're on.
Yeah, quick trigger. For
All right, sixth man of the year on the men's side.
We're going to give that, for me, to Christian Corsalt from Kansas City. Been lighting it up a lot lately, 7 back-to-back 17-point games. Really impressive showing against South Dakota State. Averages nearly 10 points a game off the bench, so I got to go to him. I got to give it to him.
All right, that sounds fair. Eli King for me from North Dakota. Points-wise, he's not filling it up necessarily, but he's getting 20 to about a half hour every single game. 7 points, 4 rebounds. He's a guy that's in there that's making plays when they need it.
Never heard anybody say somebody plays about a half hour a game.
Hey, we're mixing it up here, right? On the women's side.
My sixth woman of the year, Jalea Oglesby. I mean, she comes in, it seems like she never misses. She's aggressive, kind of like that Lou Will effect we were talking about before the show, where, when she comes in the game, she's trying to score. She gets buckets, top 10 in scoring on the women's side, and she comes off the bench.
That's pretty impressive. I also chose Jalea Oglesby, so nice to agree with you on that one. All right, player of the year so far, I guess halfway player of the year on the men's side for you.
Tommy Bruner. I mean, it goes without saying, nation's leading scorer. Denver's near the top of the league. It's tough to outdo what he's done. I talked about Zeke and what he's been able to do, but I think if he's been outdone by anybody, it's been Tommy. He's been incredible to watch this season.
And I also have Tommy Bruner, 28-5 in league play. Leader in both categories at 5 assists per game, so he's getting some helpers out there. Obviously, he has some guys that are making shots as well when they need to, but he's been special all year.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about for you on the women's side?
Women's side, it's kind of a toss-up, and if I had to choose right now, it would be kind of a co-player of the year.
You do have to choose right now.
Yeah, I will choose right now, but it's going to be kind of a co-player of the year. I'm going to give it to the Myers on South Dakota State. Not related, but both Brooklyn and Paige Meyer, you could argue, are just as important to the success of that team. Brooklyn Meyer on the inside, Paige Meyer on the outside, initiating offense, running that offense. So for me, it's going to be a co-player of the year pick with Brooklyn and Paige Meyer.
Okay. I chose Brooklyn Meyer. I think her 15 points and seven rebounds a game and everything else that she adds to that South Dakota State team, just forcing defenses to collapse onto her and, taking a brunt of that pressure from defenses allows her to kick the ball out when necessary, opens up shots for Paige and, some of the other players on this team, and so consistent shooting-wise herself, the whole team is. I think if you could give it to a team, it'd probably be South Dakota State, right? Well, let's take a look at our midseason champions of the year and predictions coming up for the regular season, as well as the tournament champions when the tournament comes here in Sioux Falls in March.
Right.
Who's your regular season champ for both sides?
Regular season, it's for both sides. It's got to be SDSU's, right? I mean, right now South Dakota State on the men's side sits at 5-2. I see them continuing to have success, winning. They have some good matchups coming up. They will face North Dakota State on Thursday at home. That should be a game that they take care of business. There's a lot of games where they can just take care of business. Not easy games. Yeah. I expect them to win the regular season on the women's side. South Dakota State as well. I mean, who's going to challenge them? Who's going to step up and end the streak that is what the South Dakota State women have been able to put together? Do you want my tournament champion right now?
Yeah.
Tournament champion is tough on the men's side. Even though I think South Dakota State will take care of business on the men's side, I also think that come March, when it's a one-game playoff, anything can happen. And I'm actually going to say St. Thomas will win the Summit League tournament. I like just their ability, on defense, what they can do in a one-game playoff type setting. I'll just give the edge to the Tommies. Plus, I think it'd be really interesting just to see if they can make it happen. Johnny Tower's a great coach. They got a great team. Would be fun to see. On the women's side, Oral Roberts, I know They just lost to South Dakota State on Sunday. Yep. But if there's any team that can dethrone the juggernaut that is South Dakota State, especially in March, I'm giving the nod to the Golden Eagles.
All right. Well, my regular season champs are St. Thomas. I think that their loss to South Dakota State was so close. I mean, it's marginal at that point. Zeke Mayo comes down the court with 6 seconds left, hits a corner or a little short corner floater to win it. Raheem Anthony had a shot at the end, just hit back iron. There's not a huge difference between these two teams. I think St. Thomas goes on the road to Frost Arena and beats South Dakota State to take that top spot. Tourney champs for the men, Denver. I think they score a ton. And in March, you need to score. And in March, you need a point guard that can score. You need a big that's on the inside. Maybe he's coming off the bench. Maybe he's starting. They have Isaiah Carr, a 7-footer. Toko Tynamo, another guy that you mentioned. The Finn, he has been special for them. A veteran. That's a dangerous team in March. Defensively, they have some questions that need to be answered. And then on the women's side, I have South Dakota State winning the regular season and the tournament. It's a very difficult team to beat. They're going to have that crowd behind them the entire time. We saw it last year. It was a noon tip-off for the semifinal on a Monday. 10,000 people were there. Incredible stuff. All right, let's take a look back at last week. Some moments in sports are so crazy that they're hard to believe without video evidence. Wilt's 100, Babe's called shot, the Immaculate Reception, and South Dakota versus Denver. Yes, that's on that list. Summit League after dark, and things got wild. In overtime, South Dakota up 90-84 with 50 seconds left thanks to some big buckets by Caleb Stewart. The nation's leading scorer hits back-to-back threes for Denver to make it a one-possession game. After an air ball from Bruner, 17 seconds left, Paul Bruns misses one on the other end, and the door remains ajar with a 4-point lead. Ball with Tommy Bruner. Hesitates and hits the three and the foul. Can you believe it? Bruner completes the 4-point play, and we're tied at 96. To double OT we go. Extra free basketball. Staying up a little extra late. Caleb Stewart scores the first 5 for South Dakota, but Denver answers each time. This is Apollo versus Rocky. $1:20 to go. Tie game. Stewart hits another step-back triple. Bruner drives on the other end and kicks to Tyson Garth, who nails the corner pocket triple. All square at 108 with 51 seconds left. Caleb Stewart scores, and it's a 2-point Coyote lead. South Dakota with the ball after an offensive foul by Denver. A little press Virginia action from the Pios. Bruns gets the game on his hand, and it's blocked by Jackson Brinchley. Denver gets the rock, and Tommy Bruner drives, but steps on a defender's foot, turns the ball over, and this one is over, right? This is Summit League After Dark, so no, Tommy Bruner jumps the inbound pass with 6 seconds, gets it over to Isaiah Adoankra, and he drills the game-winning three just like he did against Idaho. Denver wins the heavyweight bout, 111-110, backed by 49 points from Tommy Bruner. Caleb Stewart scores 44. Those individual efforts are number 1 and number 2 in the nation this season.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's so unfortunate that someone in that game had to come out on the losing side. I mean, it was great basketball all around. It had everything you wanted. It had good defensive plays. It had great shot making. Just an incredible game. One of the best college basketball games I've ever watched, flat out.
Yeah, an incredible performance. Tommy Bruner just coming down the court back-to-back possessions and nailing threes when they needed. I mean, it was something special. I've watched the highlights probably 50 times.
Yeah. Well, on the other side for the women, a matchup between two teams looking up at the rest of the conference. It looked like Omaha would actually stay winless in conference play after the first half of this matchup. However, the story of Denver's season this year has been struggling to play a complete game. Unfortunately, that problem bit them once again in the rear end as Kennedy Grant led a second-half surge for the Mavericks, finishing with a career-high 24 points in the 80-77 win. Huge moment for Carrie Banks and company, but not so much for Doja Woods and Denver. Angelina Robles' 28-point masterclass comes in a loss. Keenan, this is an Omaha team that was staring a potential winless conference play season in the face at halftime, and yet they rally back and win against Denver, who's also been struggling. I mean, these two teams are struggling, but a big win for Omaha nonetheless.
It is, and I mean, this is an Omaha team that was in the Summit League title game a year ago. They were in the Summit League title game 3 years ago. I mean, they've been there, and Kerry Banks has found a way to get this team to win. The question is for them, can they continue this winning? They have a tough one on the road this week, and we'll see what happens. Rather at home this week, actually on the road, sorry, at St. Thomas this week. We'll see what happens, but can they bounce back and can they continue this and kind of build on it? On the men's side, first place South Dakota State went on the road to Oral Roberts with the Golden Eagles coming off a big win over Omaha as they avoided a 4-game losing skid. It was all Oral Roberts in this one. Taking an 11-point lead into recess. The second half was high scoring, but Oral Roberts hangs on to win 87-82 behind 32 points and 8 3-pointers from Deshane Weaver on a career night in front of 7,000 people at the Mabee Center. Yeah,
that was impressive. I mean, for Oral Roberts, for as much as they struggled this year, I think that was the most complete game we've seen them play. It's credit to them also because South Dakota State, they wouldn't go away. I mean, there were multiple times where Oral Roberts would have like a 7 or 9-point lead kind of in that late game range, but South Dakota State just kept coming, but Oral Roberts able to keep them at bay, pick up a huge win. Really impressive stuff by Oral Roberts, and that's a game that you can kind of rally off of that, and it doesn't just become a one-off big win. Yeah. It becomes a streak that ends up at 5, 6, 7 games. So really important for them to get that one.
Very important. An explosive squad, incredibly talented, very experienced guys who have been to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament as a 15 seed. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Credit to them. The big game of the week was the standalone nationally televised game in Brookings. It looked every bit as good as advertised after 20 minutes, but then the Jackrabbits showed why they are the standard in the Summit League in the second half, breaking it open in the third quarter, and at one point in the second half, they led by as much as 23 points. Brooklyn Meyer made her statement with 27 points on 12 of 13 shooting. Maddie Matthewitz also impressed with 15 points. And Mesa Byam and Jenna Hopp added 11 off the bench. Of course, these two teams will meet again, Keenan, but is there anyone that can beat South Dakota State?
I mean, we'll find out on Thursday, won't we?
Right.
North Dakota State, they're going on the road. South Dakota State has passed every single test that this league has thrown at them. Now there's one more team, the 8th team that they haven't played, North Dakota State. They match up really well with South Dakota State. I mean, we'll talk about it here coming up in the show, but it's going to be a very interesting matchup.
Yeah, excited for Thursday. It's going to be a good week.
It's going to be another great week, and we'll talk to North Dakota State's Elle Evans after her big shooting weekend as the Bison prepare for their biggest game of the year.
Get ready, we're ballin'. You go right, I go left. Put in work, drippin' sweat, ain't even halftime yet. We're ballin'. Bounce 'em out the floor, get 'em, check the score. Yeah, we get 'em, they ain't even know what hit 'em. We're ballin'. They wanna get like me. You better turn this thing up a couple 100 degrees. We're ballin'. I got glory in my bones, now don't let me into my zone.
From the first shot to the final buzzer, don't miss a moment of the Summit League basketball season. Midco Sports Plus is the streaming home for all your Summit League teams. Subscribe today for exclusive content, expert team analysis, complete game coverage, and every single minute of Summit League action. Subscribe and watch at midcosportsplus.com.
The Ticket Smarter Peak Performers of the Week on the men's side are co-peak performers, Tommy Bruner from Denver and ORU's Isaac McBride. Bruner's 49 points and 8 assists in Denver's win over South Dakota is the most in the same game since Jimmer Fredette did that against Arizona in 2009. He's the nation's leading scorer on one of the hottest offenses in the country. Isaac McBride helped Oral Roberts to 2 wins as they climbed out of last place and back into the mix with wins over Omaha and South Dakota State. The star guard scored 17 of his 19 points in the second half against South Dakota State. On the women's side, South Dakota State's Brooklyn Meyer helped the Jacks to 2 wins while averaging 19 points and 7 rebounds. Her Jackrabbits are in clear possession of first place, going unbeaten through the first 7 games of league play. They'll play Elle Evans and North Dakota State on Thursday in Fargo. Evans scored a career-high 29 points on 7 of 7 shooting from 3 in their win over St. Thomas, and that performance was her 3rd straight 20-point game. Joined now by our Peak Performer of the Week, presented by Ticket Smarter, Elle Evans from North Dakota State. 7 for 7 shooting, 29 points, a career night for you on Thursday against St. Thomas. What was that like, and why didn't you shoot a little bit more if you were 7 for 7?
Yeah, I mean, it was nice. It's always nice when you have the hot hand, and credit to my teammates for finding me. But, yeah, I heard that after the game that I was close to some records, so knowing that, I probably would have shot a little bit more if I was 100%, but
Well, not to take away from anything that you guys have done this season, but I think just with the way that Summit League play is shaped out this year, it's really just it's looked like South Dakota State versus the rest. You guys haven't played them yet, so how much does that kind of weigh on your conscience? Because you know at some point you're going to match up against them twice this year, so how important is it to really kind of send a message and say, hey, you guys are good, but we're just as good?
yeah, I mean, it's huge. They've always been a powerhouse in this league, and you kind of said it. It's a huge game and a huge week for us, but we talked about it a little bit. It's also just another week of basketball. We just need to stick to ourselves, stick to our game plan, and I think we'll be just fine.
Preparation-wise, South Dakota State's defense is the best in the league. They are one of the best in the country, and they've been like that for years. Obviously, you saw it last year in your first season in Fargo, but now you get a chance to play them. You're kind of the star of this North Dakota State team, and obviously with the experience of Heaven Hamling, what's the approach going into this week and going into this game?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, their defense is obviously the top in the league and top in the country as well. So I think just staying true to ourselves. I trust our coaches fully to give us a good game plan for what we're going to do offensively and just execute the game plan and get her done.
In the age of basketball duos, I mean, you look at the NBA and college, it seems like duos are kind of taking over again. We're getting away from the big three. You and Heaven are kind of one of the premier duos in this conference. Can you talk to just how you guys are able to play off of each other and how it's led to the success? And not only you, but she's been able to have this season, and obviously it led to a big week for you, Elle.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this a lot. I've looked up to Heaven since the second I stepped on campus. She's always just been a great leader, both on the floor but also off the floor. So to be able to play with her and be on the court with her, I mean, it's really special. And it's hard for teams to stop two really good guards kind of playing at the same position. So I think that's kind of what makes us special, to be able to play off each other. And I'm just lucky to be in the position to play with her.
Elle, thanks so much for joining us, and congratulations on the big week. Good luck this week in what is probably the game of the year, hosting South Dakota State. We'll preview that game and the rest of Thursday's slate coming up after the break.
Get ready, we're ballin'. You go right, I go left. Put in work, drippin' sweat, ain't even halftime yet. We're ballin'. Bounce 'em out the floor, let 'em check the score. Yeah, we get 'em, they ain't even know what hit 'em. We're ballin'. They wanna get like me, you better turn this thing up a couple 100 degrees. We're ballin'. I got glory in my bones, now don't let it into my zone.
From the first shot to the final buzzer, don't miss a moment of the Summit League basketball season. Midco Sports Plus is the streaming home for all your Summit League teams. Subscribe today for exclusive content, expert team analysis, complete game coverage, and every single minute of Summit League action. Subscribe and watch at midcosportsplus.com.
Here we go. 8 games on Thursday, 7 on Saturday, and 1 standalone game on Sunday. That's 15 games on Summit League Network right here, and 1 on CBS Sports Network nationally. Let's check that out with the men's schedule. North Dakota goes to South Dakota. NDSU visits South Dakota State. St. Thomas goes to Omaha for a big matchup. And Denver visits Kansas City. On the women's side, same thing, just flipped home and road locations. South Dakota goes north to North Dakota. South Dakota State heads to Fargo to play North Dakota State. Kansas City faces Denver, and Omaha goes to St. Thomas. All of Thursday's games will air on Summit League Network. All of Saturday's games will also air on Summit League Network. And of course, that one standalone is South Dakota State. in Brookings for the men on Sunday on CBS Sports Network. Well, North Dakota has been playing some really strong basketball as of late and head to a tough one in Vermillion against South Dakota, a pesky South Dakota team, right? We've seen what they can do. Obviously, Caleb Stewart can fill it up.
Yeah, he can fill it up, but the question for them is consistency. They'll look really good one game, not so good the next. Really good one game, not so good the next. If they can rattle off a couple of solid, complete game performances, they're a team. I mean, they're not too far off from getting in the mix. They sit at 2-5 right now, but a couple of wins pushes them into that middle of the pack area where that a lot of teams are. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4-win teams.
Yeah.
So you imagine you win a couple of games, then you become a 4-win team, and now you can really start to have an effect on your seeding for the Summit League tournament. So not quite over yet for South Dakota, but it will be a tough task against North Dakota, who's been playing some of the best basketball in this conference, and I would expect this one to be one where if South Dakota can't play that complete game, it could get away from them early.
North Dakota State gets a tough matchup with South Dakota State. The Jackrabbits look to maintain that small lead that they have on the league. You mentioned it. I mean, they're up by one game right now on St. Thomas, Denver, and North Dakota, who are all hot on their heels. They really can't slip up.
Yeah, every game means something. One game can be the difference between first and really fifth or sixth place right now. That's just how tight it is. I would expect that South Dakota State, this is one where they can take care of business. But North Dakota State, they got to be feeling a little bit confident with the way they've been playing. Like I've said, all year, they haven't necessarily looked bad, but they've had a lot of really close games. And that experience in those close games, if they find themselves in a dogfight with South Dakota State, they do have the experience this year in those close games to try and pull it out. So South Dakota State, they could be reeling after a loss. North Dakota State could try to find this as a spot to take advantage. But we all remember what happened the last time Zeke Mayo faced North Dakota State at home. So should be a good one.
Yeah, he had a 40-point performance that game in Brookings. That was at the end of the season last year, going into the Summit League tournament. St. Thomas and Omaha might be the game of the day as two teams kind of punching above their weight, try to continue that trend. Omaha gets a big win at Denver over the weekend. St. Thomas, they're still trying to continue their hot play, but we know how consistent they are.
Yeah, St. Thomas, you mentioned you need to be able to score. Well, you also have to be able to guard. And I think one of the best things that St. Thomas does is that they will guard you. They will make it a rock fight of a game if they have to. They're not trying to necessarily score 80, 85 points. They're content with a 57 to 55 game just as much as they're content with a 77 to 76 game. Yeah. This is a team that will win in a variety of ways, and they've impressed. Don't let their 4-3 record fool you. This is a really, really good team. They sit at second place right now, but like we said, 1 or 2 games can be a huge difference in the league, the way things are shaking up. But they will have a tough defensive task, though, going against Frankie Fiddler and that Omaha offense. And Frankie's got to be feeling good after another 30-point outing this past weekend. So that should be a really, really interesting game.
Yeah, I mean, a 2-win week or a 2-loss week can change the entire outlook of your season at this point with how tight everything is on the men's side. The last game on the men's side on Thursday. Interesting spot here for Denver. On the road for the first of 3 away from Hamilton. They've been so good at home. And starting against a Kansas City team that has some pretty good wins.
Yeah, I mean, this is this KC team. They looked really good on Thursday against South Dakota State. Unfortunate result for them, but I think that's something they can build off of. It's easy to say, oh, we played well, but eventually some of those good performances have to turn into wins. It'll be a tough task, of course, playing against who I think will eventually end up being the Player of the Year in Tommy Bruner and company. But if there was a win that you can get that you really want to feel good about, not just playing well, but also winning, it would be against Denver.
And it's at home for Kansas City, which is big for them. They do play well in their home gym. South Dakota at North Dakota on the women's side. They're 2 teams playing from the middle of the pack, but they're still within striking distance, just a few games out of first place.
Yeah, it was looking a little dicey for South Dakota at the start, but they've been able to pick it back up and get their play back to the standard that they expect after a nice win against Kansas City on Saturday. But North Dakota kind of been in that middle of the pack, kind of limped into conference play, but ever since they've been in the conference, couple of nice wins, couple of not so good losses though. So this will be a good tell for the 2 of these teams to see where they stand. Should be a good one.
The game of the day on Thursday. On the women's side, number 1 versus number 2. South Dakota State heads north on I-29 to visit North Dakota State. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I will be locked in for sure. Heaven Hamling and Elle Evans against Paige Meyer and Brooklyn Meyer and the rest of that South Dakota State team who really, I mean, for as much as we rave about Brooklyn Meyer and Paige Meyer, everyone on that team is really finding their role. Aaron Johnson's been saying that everyone looks comfortable. They look like a different team. They feel like they have a different energy about them right now. But it'll be a tough task. They'll be on the road in Fargo against North Dakota State playing for something to prove. Oof, can't wait.
Kansas City and Denver face each other as the two teams look to get something going in this long season. Denver struggled losing to Omaha and, losing over the weekend. What do you kind of see from this one?
I mean, again, it's just the same thing of, can Denver play a full game? If Denver can play a full 40 minutes, they have talent. It's not like they don't have talent. You've got multiple players that can line it up as far as scoring the ball, but you got to play that full 40 minutes. That's the difference between wins and losses. They played great first halves. They've played great second halves. They haven't played a great first and second half yet in league play. For Kansas City, though, they're kind of in that same boat where they haven't really been able to put turn a good performance into a win. They've played good games, but they haven't been able to turn those good games into wins. They played good games and maybe lost by a possession or two. So these are two teams where, the winner of this will get that leg up. And also you're looking at these teams that are at the bottom where, you kind of want to avoid being that first team to play those first couple of games. So these are the type of games you want to win to avoid that come Summit League play.
Omaha got their first league win of the year over the weekend against Denver. Can they continue this trend against a good St. Thomas team?
It'll be tough. Omaha will definitely have a lot to feel good about after winning over the weekend against Denver. But this St. Thomas team, they're just so well balanced. I mean, you've got so many players that give you, Joe Langdon, Jade Hill, Amber Scalia, who I put on my midway first team all Summit League. It'll be a tall task for Omaha. I'm not saying they can't get it done, but it'll be a really big win for them if they can get it done.
That's Thursday's slate of games. Sign up for Summit League Network to watch all of those on Thursday, plus the 7 games on Saturday at summitleaguenetwork.tv. And of course, we previewed it. We made our picks at this point for the Summit League tournament. We'll see what happens over these next few weeks. Get your tickets now so you can witness it here in Sioux Falls at the Sanford Premier Center. At thesummitleague.org/tickets. Another fun week on tap for us. I think a lot to look forward to, a lot to be decided, especially on Thursday.
Yeah, that women's matchup between South Dakota State and North Dakota State is one that I will be glued to. I will be locked in. A lot of people are excited about it. There's a lot of buzz about it, and it'll say a lot about, really a lot about North Dakota State. I think if they're able to get a win, it sends a message not just to South Dakota State, but also to the rest of the league. Where you think South Dakota State's good, well, look at us.
Look, South Dakota State is really good. They've won 38 consecutive in the regular season in league play. That's very difficult to beat. They're 56-1 over the past 4 years in league play. That one loss was to South Dakota's Sweet 16 team. So there's going to be a tall task for North Dakota State or anybody who wants to beat South Dakota State. We'll find out what happens. And of course, join us, won't you? Next week on Wednesday, we'll be back here to recap all these games and look forward to another week ahead in a fun Summit League. He's Darren Wallace. I'm Keenan Dixon. This has been Summit League Spotlight.